right, everybody, we are here. It is a great time. We are in January of 2025, and that means it's a brand new year for gaming. And we are blessed to be here with a fantastic guest. This is Daniel from Daniel and Lily. You might know them on the internet from Lorcana Fanatics, all kinds of cool stuff. I love your pictures of dim sum. Makes me super happy. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're just gonna have a ton of fun. So please tell everyone, right off the bat, who you are, where they can find your stuff, and what you're all about.
Yeah, happy to. And first up again, my name is Daniel. My better half is my daughter, who is now 8. So 8-year-old Lily. And we go by Daniel and Lily. We're Lorcana Fanatics on all channels, Instagram, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, you name it. I think part of what's been fun for us is going on this, adventure as a dad and daughter. I do have a younger daughter, Annie, who is about to turn 5. But this has been just a really fun adventure for us over the last year and a half, where the moment Disney Lorcana came out, and I'm happy to talk about kind of the origin story, if you will, but essentially it's been an incredible wild ride for us where, how often as a parent, right? How often as a dad do you find a hobby that your child enjoys where you're not on the sidelines, right? Like if my kid wanted to play soccer or basketball or football, whatever, or even track, right? You're on the sidelines, you're on the bleachers. And there's something so special about being part of an activity where we get to sit next to each other. We're not always playing against each other, we're playing with each other. There's not really that 2v2 format that's really popular yet. But the thing that Lily loves so much about Lorcana is getting to do something with me. And we don't just get to do it. Like we spend hours doing it together. And so, on a weekly basis, normally we go to a local game store. We get to play, Disney Lorcana League. And that's usually like a 3-hour affair. Which if you think about it, if she was a competitive dancer, a soccer player, all of those types of activities would require roughly about the same amount of time. And so for us, this has just kind of been a fun hobby to lean into. This is Lily's sport, essentially. She does dance, she does piano, she does other things too. But it's just been a really fun adventure to go on together. And of course, we love Disney. We're a Disney family. And so I think to sum it up, I think what really caught on for us was, number one, this is something fun. We get to do that together. And it's also at the beginning of a new trading card game, right? I mean, Disney Lorcana, when it came out in August 2023, is that right? 2024? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2023. Yeah. We were able to find cards through our neighbor, Andrew, and he has a daughter too. And so it became kind of this like, let's hang out with our neighbors and play something together. And then that sort of blossomed into where we are now, where Lily and I have had a chance to not only play local league, attend and participate in set championships. And it's been so much fun to watch Lily do well in those things. But then also, I think just to sum up the experience, we've had a chance to go to one of the Disney Lorcana challenges in Chicago together. And that just sort of like anchors sort of like a first year experience. And there's a lot more in betweens, but ultimately I would say we love Disney Lorcana. We're clearly Lorcana Fanatics as a result, right?
That's good. So do you have any kind of prior trading card game experience before Lorcana?
It's a great question. No, I mean, I collected, let's see, Star Wars CCG was probably my first CCG.
Yeah.
Right. And that probably dates me a little bit. And then, Pokemon, right? Who hasn't collected a Pokemon card or two, right? But I think nothing where I really sat down and certainly never a game that I've gone to a store to play. And so, I still remember the first time. And again, thanks to my neighbor, we showed up to our local game store, which I didn't even realize existed. That was 5 minutes from our house, which also added to, I think, the convenience factor for us of doing something together. And we walked in and we had no idea what we were doing. I think I had my starter deck. I had Lily's starter deck. And we bought Dragon Shield sleeves like that day. I think the first set of games we played, nothing was sleeved. And, but simultaneously, I'm a maven. I like information. I like doing research. And so I went home. And I went on the internet and just looked for community, right? I went on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, and tried to just soak up as much information as I could about how do you get into this, trading card game? And of course, that led me to Magic the Gathering and the entire community there, and obviously lots of interesting on ramps and folks who play this game that have been very kind in sharing their advice and their wisdom. But yeah, it's been a journey, right, from the very beginning, day one.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've been having a lot of fun because not only are you doing something with your daughter, but you're also able to travel throughout the United States. So, like, what'd you think of Chicago? Like, I go to Chicago for other conventions and events, but like, the food is so good. I miss deep dish pizza. Makes me so hungry for like a good quality slice of deep dish. But yeah, what does that feel like going from you're not really doing much of anything to I'm doing this with my daughter. Oh my gosh, there's a store nearby, and now we're gonna travel. Like that's a really large jump within a year.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think part of what gave us or gave me, right, in particular, the conviction is, if you're gonna go deep on something, you go all the way, right?
Right. Yeah.
We know that this game is at its beginning. Obviously, there's been wonderful other, content creators like the Limiteers, right, Liam and Aaron, who are local to us, and so having strong local community that I can bounce ideas off of, that's been helpful. I do think I have to give a shout out to them, of course. And then I think the other two individuals that have really helped us sort of what I kind of call on ramp and figure out sort of how far do we go, right? In this first year has been Adam and Dana Fisher. And so do you know Adam and Dana?
Oh no, who are they?
So Adam and Dana are pretty big competitive players in the Magic the Gathering community. And, I don't quote me on this, right? But Dana basically, to me, she has a whole Wikipedia page. Dana's like the youngest competitive Magic the Gathering player. Right? I think she started learning Magic the Gathering when she was 2 years old, before she could read, right? And by the time she was, I think, 9 or 10, she was, at a regional tournament. I would say like something felt like probably bigger than a set championship, and she was doing extremely well. And so, connecting with them, a lot of people, once we kind of started to find our way, people said, you've got to talk to them. And Adam has been one of the most critical people for us in terms of navigating this broader space of not only the travel piece, but what is going to a tournament look like with a younger player, right? Who isn't even 13 years old, right? And what is it like to set up a separate Melee account when you only have one phone, right? When you have a kid who doesn't even have their own cell phone, and so much has to be done that way. They have just been instrumental in helping me just feel confident in different things, from just decisions around, do we go to this event, to what does it look like? How do we travel? How do we, maximize the time? And so they've been critical. But back to your question around Chicago. I mean, I've been to Chicago before. I'm lucky that I've traveled. My wife and I have traveled quite a bit. Before we had kids, I would say fairly global travelers, and so that wasn't really a hurdle, right? I think this was actually our first solo trip, right, together. So that was definitely something new for us, and that was part of, I think, the excitement, right? Is let's go do something together. Let's make some memories together. And gosh, the rest is history. Like, it feels like that was so long ago, right? I mean, Chicago was. I think for me, the calculus as a parent was, number one, I want to experience this so I can talk about it with other parents, right? And be able to be a perspective that is not someone who, goes to and just travels to competitions all the time, right? There are clearly competitive players that do that. I don't think that's us yet. And we'll see if Lily continues to enjoy playing the game competitively, right? Or if she enjoys the game more socially. But I think we picked Chicago because it was a easy direct flight on Southwest nonstop. I'm lucky to have a companion pass, and so Lily's ticket was free. And you bet there was definitely a bit of an economical kind of component to making decisions, right, around what do we invest our time, energy, money into. And it worked out where we were able to get off, the wait list. That was one of the challenges that was definitely oversubscribed. But for me, it was the calculus of both being a nonstop flight and also being where the competition was in the hotel, right? So being able to be in a place where I didn't have to grab an Uber, didn't have to do a lot of travel walking with Lily. That just kind of made for like the ideal scenario. And we didn't compete in the challenge, right? We ended up getting off the wait list for attendees, so we got to attend as attendees, and I think that was the right tempo for us because at Chicago, they hadn't really quite figured out, I think, a lot of pieces, right? So, for example, if you have a minor, having fixed seatings, right, I think is a really beneficial thing, and that's like some of the examples of the advice and tips that Adam Fisher had given us. But those are things that I think as a parent, you don't really know if you're brand new to a trading card game, and certainly if you're brand new to any kind of competitive event, right? Let alone in a sort of card gaming experience.
So you're taking, this giant leap. You're starting from 0, going to 100. For people who are listening, especially parents who are thinking about 2025, do you have any advice you would share with them based on your experiences? Because it sounds like there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. There's a lot of topics that may or may not really be covered. Because if you think about most content about any given trading card game, usually it's coming from the perspective of a competitive player. Usually they're traveling by themselves or they're traveling with a team. So it's all adults. It's very rare to see parent and child traveling and going through that process. So like, what are some tidbits you've learned that you want to share with people who are listening?
Yeah, before I break that down, I was actually quite surprised by how many other parents and kids we met along the way.
Really?
Right? In Chicago, there was I remember one dad who had 3 kids there, right? Obviously, they were a little bit closer in, so I think they drove in. I don't think they were like just in the Chicago direct area, but so they had to make the effort. But it was amazing, right, to see the 4 of them, grinding away at side events, right, trying to pull together enough tickets to get the Cinderella, Stout Hatter playmat, which I think was like 90 tickets, right? And then they got it. They got there. That was really exciting to watch. When I went to Seattle by myself, it was amazing to see kind of, how far and how many more parents brought their kids. It was exciting even to see a few kids playing in the actual competition as well. And so I think a lot has sort of evolved both, I think, in the Seattle area, probably more kids, right, who are into trading card games, into Disney Lorcana. But I will say, I think what makes it special is Disney Lorcana is different. It's, I think, by design, a much more welcoming game and environment. And it's also at its infancy. And so I think, and what I'm excited about and what we're excited about is the fact that we do believe that Disney Lorcana is for all, but it's certainly for families. And so I think the best advice I give, I mean, this is something I've been thinking about and plan to probably write a little bit more about in the future. I think there's 3 things that are key. The first one is, of course, what are your goals? Right? Are you looking to participate in a Disney Lorcana regional type of event, right? And there's kind of 2 sort of lanes, right? There's the competitive lane, right? I'm going to a Disney Lorcana challenge because I want to compete and hope that I win. And, winning means, prizes. It means a invitation to a regional continental event that then leads to a world event. And then there's the other lane, which is I am there as an attendee, right, as a spectator who plays in a number of different side events. So I get to be part of the experience. And I'm there to basically play Lorcana for 2 to 3 days straight. I think those are the kind of 2 main lanes, right? I think if you're a collector, going to a regional event is probably not what you're looking for, right? It's probably not the best bang for your buck, right? But I think it starts with, do you enjoy this game? And then secondly is finding a event that is economically, I think, close enough. Right? I don't think it makes sense to fly halfway around the country to go to something if it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, right? I would equate this experience to probably the same amount of money that you'd spend on a vacation, right? And so I think when you think about it, those costs and expenses that way, I think you can factor in. I mean, I think I've done the calculation, right? And those are some of my best, I think, posts that people have reacted to is, Chicago cost us about $1,000, right? And we were able to cut a lot of cost because Lily's ticket was free. Right? It was complimentary thanks to our Southwest Companion Pass. And then again, I think we took really judicious care about where we spent our money. Right? We for this first event, though it was actually Lily's first time to Chicago, we did not travel around. Right? I didn't take her to the Bean. Right? We didn't go to a lot of places because I think that would have tired her out a lot, and that would have been too much. So. I think those are some just kind of initial thoughts. The third one, I said three, right? I think the third piece is, so you've got, okay, do I want to go compete or do I want to be part of this experience? That's the first thing. The second one is, can I find a location that's close by? I think that's kind of key. Nonstop flight with kids, I think just easier. And then I think the third thing is like, if you have a local community to go with, it really makes a difference because if you are just there with your kid, like you have no backup, right?
Right,
one of the challenges, at least right now, when you go to these events, is every person going needs an attendee ticket, and I hope that they work on different ways to allow family support, right? An extra parent. Like, here's an example: if Lily and I both wanted to compete, I think she is capable of competing. The problem is if we're both competing, then I may not be sitting next to her the whole time, right? If she needs to go to the bathroom, she's not going to go to the bathroom on her own, right? She's 8 years old. I think we're perhaps more protective as parents, but if she was 13, totally different story.
Yeah,
if you've got a child who is 6 to 12 years old, loves this game, and you're like, should I bring my child to a competition? The answer is yes, right? Make those great core memories. But there's these logistical things down to when my kid needs to go to the bathroom and I'm still playing, who's going to take them, right? And so if you are able to find a local community of players who also travel to these events together, maybe you're not part of that team, but having that support group is so critical. So yeah, I know we're rambling a little bit here, but I think those are probably my three key things, and there's a whole lot more, but those are the three things I think a lot about. And I think if you're trying to set up the infrastructure, there's a curiosity question of, do you want to compete? And then there's this piece about finding where you can compete. And there's a third thing of which is like, make sure you have the community that supports you and supports your family and your quest together, if you will, right?
Yeah, I don't think rambling is a bad thing on a podcast. It kind of makes things more interesting. But yes, I agree. If you're playing in a tournament and you're in the same bracket, say you go undefeated, you're going to keep moving tables. You're not going to sit next to anybody. You're always going to keep moving around. The odds of any two people being next to each other for the entirety of a tournament is like 0. And like if you have an 8-year-old, somebody needs to be with that 8-year-old for safety and protection. So yeah, essentially you're going to need a third person, realistically.
Yeah.
And that means
also, I will go back and I will say one of the great things about if you're playing in a trading card game competition that uses Melee as a platform, and I'm sure other tournament organized platforms probably have this feature as well, but Melee in particular has a fixed seating feature. And it is something that Disney Lorcana has taken in as an accommodation. And so in Chicago, they didn't have this set up yet, right? So in Chicago, I think I was probably one of the first parents to ask about it. And again, I felt sort of supported to ask for something like that, thanks to Adam, because that's exactly what him and Dana have had to do, right, over the years. And that fixed seating matters greatly, right? If you're at even the side event, right, where there's only perhaps 64 players or 250 players at a time, having fixed seating allows you and your kid to it allows you to focus on your kid, and making sure that they're ready for the next round instead of like running around. And here's the other piece, right, is like, if they're not old enough to have a phone yet, how are they going to check Melee to figure out where their seating is?
Right? Or even communicate with you like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom, or like,
exactly.
I need a snack, water. Yeah, absolutely. It's important. I think this is an interesting question, especially since you're in the thick of it. Do you think that we're going to see something similar to Pokemon where they have like a juniors division for younger hobbyists where maybe like Thursday, Friday will be juniors division, and then like Saturday, Sunday will be adults, so you don't have to worry about the crossover in the midst of an event, because that pulls a lot of mental faculty from you as a competitor, because now you're concerned about not only playing but like your child's safety and health and well-being.
Yeah, sure. No, I think the question about juniors or something, a format. I don't think it's an if. I think it's a when. It has to be, right? I mean, again, the goal for Disney Lorcana, I think, is to bring families into this game together. So I think that's an absolute yes. I actually do have a lot of thoughts on sort of how you would organize and set that format up. So I'll kind of lean in on what you just said.
Yeah,
Thursday, Friday. That sounds like a great idea, right? Because it's convenient. You're just tacking on the first 2 days. But have you thought about the fact that if you're a parent, that's taking your kid out of school for 2 days, and you're probably traveling on Wednesday now, right? Because if you're competing Thursday, you don't travel the day you're competing. There's a lot of logistical decisions I think that have to be made, but that's my kind of like just a first reaction, right? Hot take is I think it has to be on Saturday, Sunday, so it has to be in parallel. I think for me as a parent, if Lily was at a point where she was loving this game and she was loving competing, I would give up, my own sort of competitive piece to support her. Absolutely. At the same time, I think there's also a part of me that would say it would be wonderful to, there's a part of me that says, Lily doesn't need a juniors league. There's a part of me that says that because, again, watching Dana Fisher and how incredible she is, as I think when she was 10 or 11, she essentially like top eighted, right? And I think when she was like 12, she won her first like big cash prize tournament. I mean, those are, again, she's special. She's a special kid. I do love the environment that Pokemon creates. I think it's an incredible ecosystem that they've built. But at the same time, I would say, I think as a parent, I would have to ask myself, who am I doing this for? What does that look like? And what is having a great experience and balancing that for all look and feel like? I think I would be so happy if Lily wanted to go full in on the competitive side. I would focus in on that for her, and then I would probably get most of my playing in at a championships, right? Or other online, virtual, webcam, tournaments like what Team Labyrinth do, right? So I think that's kind of probably where I would feed myself, right? So that I could stay also, top of my game to support her.
Well, I also think that you're a very unique scenario because most people I know whose kids do, specifically Pokemon, the parents don't care. They're just there to support them, travel with them for their safety and protection. But the parents don't particularly play. They might know what Pokemon is. So I'm curious if you've seen similar things in Lorcana where if there's children participating, the parents are participating with them simultaneously. Because it doesn't seem to be particularly common, but it could be different because Pokemon and Lorcana are not the same game and they're totally different communities.
I think it all goes back to a really key thing for 2025, which is how is Disney Lorcana, right? How is Ravensburger going about segmenting their markets?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Because if you think of Pokemon has it's so immersive or invasive. I don't know what the right word is.
Both. It's both. It's all of the
above. It's both, right? It's all of the above, right? I mean, it is the largest IP in the world, right? Hands down. It's larger than Disney. There's something about Pokemon where your kid is going to learn about Pokemon before you do, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Whether it's even just as simple as a Happy Meal, right, might be their first pack that they open. But Pokemon's done an incredible job to, immerse themselves. And, it's like you can't be a kid, you can't be a middle schooler and not come home and talk about Fortnite and Pokemon. And so that is a game where it's definitely, let's use the term like bottoms up, right? The kid is going to instigate, I love this game, go buy me cards. Right?
You think Lorcana is the opposite?
I don't know that it's the opposite, right? I think it's only the opposite right now because the game's only been around for a year. Right. And so this goes back to a marketing question of, is the marketing team going to double down on, let's call it millennial Disney adults
right, or
who now have kids right, that are in
Yeah.
that range,
Yeah.
and it's something you do together as a family, right? And I think like the gateway product is a great example where it is like a board game, right? It feels more
Uh-huh.
like a board game than it feels like a competitive racing card game. And of course, right, Pokemon has their first pack, right? Their first kind of starter kit. Magic the Gathering has the same thing. But I think there's both the segment of millennial parents who grew up playing trading card games, right? Whether it's Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or even Pokemon. Um, and then I think there's a set of parents where it's like you're just fans of Disney. And I think that's the market that I'm most interested in because I don't have to convince that market segment, um, that they should fall in love with all the Disney intellectual properties, right? And I also don't really need to convince that audience on, thinking about cost, right? Because if you're collecting pins, right,
Oh,
then
yes.
you've already budgeted right for your kind of Disney spend a
You
year.
have expendable
Uh,
income. Yep.
exactly, and so I think that's going to be an important segment, right? The parents who have children, and they already love Disney, but they don't know what a trading card game is. They've never walked into a hobby store before, right? I think that's the population I'm going to be really interested to see how does Ravensburger capture that market segment in 2025. And it's something as simple as I'll give a real life example. Lily just had a classmate, come over to play over the break, and this girl has never been exposed to Disney Lorcana because she's no longer actually in Lily's class. Well, she comes over and she sees some Disney Lorcana cards, and she goes, "Oh, I have one of those," because she got the Moana 2 promo. Right? She
Yeah.
went and saw Moana 2. She got the promo card. She's like, "I don't know what this is." Right? But she has it, and guess what? We have an event, and she's going to be coming to that event, where we're going to teach kids to learn how to play. So I think that's a really interesting segment. Now, to your point about the bottoms up piece, I do think we're going to hit a point where there is critical mass, and there are kids who are like, check out Disney Lorcana. Their art is awesome. I love Disney. I want to collect this stuff. And then I think that's going to trigger the kid who drags their parents in and says, I want to do more. But I just think we're so early in the game right now. I think if we were actually to add up all the kids who are actually playing Disney Lorcana, it's not even 1% of the kids who play Pokemon, right? It's not even
Oh,
1%.
no. I
Right?
mean, it's got like 12, 14, it's like 16, 14, 15, 16 months on the market. Like, there's
Yeah,
no way. Pokemon is multi-generational. That's not even a fair
exactly.
comparison. Yeah. Also, Pokemon has so much larger reach right now. It's no. Yeah. I don't think there's even a possibility of that happening in the first at least what 3 to 5 years. It takes a long time to build that
It does.
cornerstone.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, I think for us, what drives us to stay engaged with the local community and the online community is, I'm someone who I'm a community builder, and I believe that it takes the folks who really care enough to go above and beyond and
Yeah.
ensure that the environment, right, the local environment, is in a really good place, so that when these parents and their kids show up, that they feel like this is something that they belong, or this is the place where they belong.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's
No.
going to be key.
That's totally fair. Totally off topic question. You don't have to go super deep into it, but what do you do for a living? Because I love the way like you parse data and information. And it's like, okay, I could probably guess like approximately what field you're in without going like super deep. But like, what do you do?
Yeah. So started out as a consultant. So there you go. And
Mhm.
now I work in higher education, actually. So
Yep.
I'm an
Yep.
administrator in higher education.
Yeah, that is not surprising. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Well, you just seem to look at a lot of faculties and perspectives that I don't think the average individual, especially if they're not a parent, really needs to consider because like I'm not a parent right now. So I don't need to consider a child or travel with a child or safety. Like I have, nieces, nephews and stuff like that. But it's like, this makes so much sense. Okay, cool. Anyways, moving forward. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about onboarding people into trading card games, specifically Disney Lorcana, because there's there's a lot of stuff on the market, just game wise. There's a lot of video games, a lot of board games. There's a lot of trading card games, and time is extremely limited. You only have 24 hours in a day, and you're constantly bombarded by, friends, family, marketing, life to eat away those 24 units in a day. And sometimes you're intimidated by a trading card game. It doesn't matter what it is. You just hear the term trading card game, and usually people immediately think about Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, the big classics. And there's all kinds of preconceived notions. There's a lot of lacking of information because, Lorcana is not a hard game to play or collect, but it gets lumped in with, well, I heard that Magic game is really expensive and people are mean and they smell real bad. Well, that might be true, but this is not that game. But it's unfortunately like lumped into that. So like, what are some like barriers you've encountered when trying to, talk to people about this game you're clearly passionate about?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what is the experience that someone is hoping to gain, right? Are they approaching Disney Lorcana as I'm looking for a new hobby to fill X amount of time, right? And maybe I have some exposure, right, to other games, but for whatever reasons they may be, right, it's like, I'm going to try this one out. I think a local game store is so hypercritical to this, right? Yeah. Because if you don't already have friends who are the ones convincing you to play Disney Lorcana, if you're just like, I'm single, or I'm, my partner and I are looking for something new to do, maybe we just moved to a new city, right? Whatever the reasons may be, and you're like, we like board games, we like tabletop things. Then I think finding a local community is pretty key to that onboarding experience, because it's not just about quickly finding other people who want to play this game, right? For hours on end with you. It's also, I think, nothing beats, and I love watching this in our local community here in Austin, Texas, where, we're lucky to have more than one hobby store. We got probably like 6 or 7 pretty active hobby stores. There's, a great Discord for the local community. And I love watching new people join, because they show up and they're like, I'm new. And then people are like, we're here to help you, and we're excited to onboard you. And here, by the way, here's all the bulk cards and other cards that you could ever need to get you off the ground and started. I think that kind of local community experience creates such a strong connection. The stickiness is there, right?
Okay, that's good. Okay.
So I think that's one. I think there's another one which is really interesting, which is like the collector angle, right? I think there are people who just love to collect, right? They have no desire to play this game, but they love Disney. They love all things Disney, and so
pin collectors.
That to me is like a really interesting population. And again, I think they're vital to trading card games, right, to a certain degree, especially if you're looking at it from like an economical standpoint of like card value and whatnot, right? That's definitely not kind of where Lily and I are. I think early on we had to make the decision, like, okay, we're not going to collect and play. I just don't have the financial wherewithal to do both, right? And to travel. Like, we have to decide, are we going to collect, or are we going to take that money, right, that we would spend investing in that collection, and instead, go to a regional event, right? So I think that's what we've decided to kind of balance our budget wise. I think there's another piece, which is, and this has been so fascinating for me as a new to trading card game experience, is this idea of like the tabletop game, right? Literally like a tabletop, right? These are people who would never go to a hobby store. They don't play Magic in a, there's no league, right, that they go to. They just get together with friends and they just play on a Saturday night, right, or Friday night, or a Wednesday night. That kind of local, casual, social format, I think, is also really interesting to me. I think this is where, we can kind of start to dive in a little bit into, draft and limited and cube formats. And I think that's something that,
my favorite.
I think there's something to be said there.
Cube. That would be awesome if you could draft. Please let me have it.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea what a cube was, right? Because again, I'm new to all this space, and the community's been amazing. And I built a cube for my birthday, right? And for those who don't know what a cube is, right, it's essentially a set of cards that make it simulate right the experience of opening up new packs. But you get to kind of design right what all the cards are that go in, and it makes for a really fun format. I mean, we had so much fun. I had local players who were regulars in our local game stores. So they knew me, they knew Lily. Gosh, I mean, I invited them to my house. It kind of felt like a LAN party.
Yeah.
And we the fun experience, and we built up a cube that was pretty high powered, I guess is the word, right? So a lot of single cards that have a lot of high values. I had a lot of legendaries in my cube, and it was so much fun to hear people kind of open up, right, quote unquote, a pack, and you've got a whole new world. You've got you've got basically an entire, it's like a god pack, right? Like every single card is a legendary or rare. You got be prepared, grab your swords, and then like everyone's like, which card do I pick? And I think that made for a really fun experience. But I do think like, Cube is also a format that as this game matures, I think you can create cubes that are also pretty budget conscious. Right. And so again, I think this is like, Pauper Cube. So now you're talking about Disney Lorcana as an experience where you're getting together with a group of friends. And I think that's probably where like a cube format, at least the way I can imagine it, a cube format becomes really fun is when you have a group of people who are very familiar with the cube and you're kind of tweaking and testing it all as you go along. And I don't know, there's a part of that seems really exciting. Like I could see in 10 years, Lily coming home for Christmas from college, right? And she's like, let's pull out this cube, right? And like, remember like set 1 through 4? So long ago, right? It's like the ancient cube. What do they call it, right? The legacy cube.
Yeah.
There's something that seems really fun and exciting about that. So anyways, I think there's something about the limited format that is exciting to think about. And again, I think it's going to have, I do hope that Disney Lorcana officially leans into that kind of sealed format more going into the future.
It'll be interesting to see what their game plan is, because it's not clear, but we'll find out later. Not critically important to the success of the game, but it would be fun. It would be really nice.
Throwing this back on you, right? Obviously, you reacted right in a really positive way around Cube, right? So what's been your experience with limited formats like you?
Well, so I actually prefer limited formats over constructed. I'm very well versed in constructed, but not having limited formats is not the thing I love when I'm looking at a trading card game. So I would prefer the team at Ravensburger to find a place for limited, sealed, draft, cube, something, anything. Anything is better than nothing. And I think a lot of people would like that opportunity because for those who don't know, a sealed event generally means you're going to be buying sealed product from a local store and you're playing with just that product. So a constructed deck means you can go home, you can open up packs, you can buy singles online, you can do whatever you want. You pull all the cards from your collection and you create a deck of your own volition. You have zero randomness. You have full control. The fun about sealed is, as a player, you are given limited options with what's in your packs or in your deck or whatever's presented to you. And you, as the player, have to solve this puzzle of how do I construct the strongest, most fluid deck with what I have? And how do I beat other people with this? And that is a really fun puzzle to solve. And if you look at Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, all these very well-established games have limited. And I'm willing to wait for Lorcana because it is a year old. However, my only trepidation is it does not seem to be on the radar for Ravensburger. Like, they don't really talk about it. They don't really mention it. They don't really support it. So it would appear, especially with 6 sets in and 2 more on the way at the time of this recording, it doesn't feel like it's on their radar. And if it's not the end of the world, but I feel like that would be fun to pull people in with. Hey, you don't have to actually buy any Lorcana cards anywhere. You could just buy 8 packs, build a deck, and play for the whole weekend. Oh, great. Totally interested in that, because I don't have to do any kind of research. I don't have to do any kind of development. I don't have to worry about what is the current metagame or the top decks. I just have to know what cards are in what sets we're pulling from, and then functionally understand what my highest, power level cards would be in what synergies. So it's an interesting proposition, but again, I don't know if that's really in the business plan for the game. And if it's not, so be it. It's hard to tell. It's really difficult at this current moment because a lot of companies will say right off the gate. Star Wars Unlimited is a great example. They said right out of the gate we have single player, multiplayer, sealed, draft, everything that a traditional trading card game, referencing back to Magic the Gathering, you could want or expect. We've built it in, and that drew a lot of people in because right off the gate you could do a booster box draft, you could do a sealed event, you could do a cube. And so it's like, so it can be done, but it's not being done. That's the big giant question mark in my head is, will it be done? Like, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it is, right? How can it not? I mean, you've got, certainly you've got a group of, I mean, both Ryan and Steve, right? Co-designers of the game. I mean, they've been around TCGs. I have to bet that they also enjoy limited formats themselves, right? I mean, while this one is probably, again, I call this like limited light, right?
Yeah.
But the pack rush format, right? Which, I would say that's about as official as you can call something official because it is it is part of their. When you go to one of these challenges and there's these side events, and one of the side events is you can sign up for a VIP experience and meet one of the developers of the game. And it's usually Ryan or Steve or another one of the developer teams. But when you sit down to do the meet and greet, you essentially play Pack Rush with them. So again, Pack Rusher, for those who aren't familiar, is you get 2 packs each and you open those up. So you have, 12 cards in each pack. And then you have sort of this usually a kind of a informational card, right? And you get to use that as your ink token. But that's a really simple format. It's definitely not for beginners, right? But if you're looking to get a quick, game out, Pack Rush it's actually a format that I love playing with Lily. It's like easy to go grab 2 packs, right, 4 packs from the store, open them up and just, play that way. I've actually figured out that Pack Rush is a great format for her, versus like if we're just like to go, it's hard for us to go to a local game store and play sealed because most of those sealed events happen like starting time 6:30, right? That event's going to go till 10, right? That's hard for me to bring, again, a 7, 8-year-old to. But it's one of the best ways for you to learn the cards in the game, right? If you're so focused on constructed formats, you're likely focused really more on the cards that are high up in the meta. And you miss out on a lot of cards I think that are pretty fun to play. That again don't show up in a meta format. But again, when you play any kind of limited format, I think you get to explore the breadth of what's out there, right? And
that's the lifeblood of sealed and limited is that player expression and discovery. Yep. Because like you said, when you're playing constructed formats, usually when a set comes out, depending on the deck you play, you might be adding like 2 to 4 cards to your deck. You don't have a huge range of growth. And so when a set comes out and there's 200 cards and you're only adding, 4 to 6, there are so many more things in there you might never even see because you don't need it. It doesn't affect you. You're not interested. But when you're playing in limited events, you care about all of them because there's really weird and unique combinations that exist in that realm that don't in constructed. And I really think it also challenges players to become better because you don't have complete control and access to all your tools. You have to grow as a player and go, oh, I have like 1 of 5 pieces I need for this puzzle. How do I offset those other 4 missing pieces and construct something that's functional? And sometimes you don't. Like that's just kind of the thing about limited is there is some luck. And sometimes you just do not get what you need. And you do as best you can, but you got a dead draw. You didn't pull any legendaries, no good rares. You just play it out, have fun, going in knowing this is not going to end well. But who knows? You'll just see what happens.
Yeah. But I'm with you. I on the point of I think limited is an important format for any trading card game, and I'm personally again I'm always gonna lean into. I do think that they have a plan. I would say Ravensburger tends to be a lot more conservative in how they communicate anything on the roadmap, right? I think that is, look, if you've been around the block for the last year and a half, you know that's just their communication style. Is it what I prefer? No.
No.
I'm someone who's going, I would love to bring my daughter to Worlds, but I have no idea when that's going to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, Disney's a part of that problem.
Sure. Yeah. And, for whatever the reasons are, again, we're in year 1+, right? And looking forward to what, how do they surprise and delight us, right? To come.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize that although Ravensburger is its own company, they're associated with Disney. And so there's a lot of back and forth with Ravensburger has to submit their plans and ideas, and then Disney has to adjust it. And then Ravensburger has to verify it. And then if it gets adjusted again, they have to go back to square one. So there's a lot of rotations of we start with A and end with 5B43 because there's so many adjustments. And that takes up time because you're going between, Ravensburger, Disney, and there's different departments that you're communicating through. So yeah, their communication isn't as what's what I'm looking for, synced as if you were to think of like Magic the Gathering, but Magic does all their stuff in house. So they can send an email to, marketing who's in the same building or give them a call and go, hey, we want to do this thing. Whereas I believe if Ravensburger's following pretty standard protocols with another party, they have to jump through some more hoops, and that just adds length of time, especially when you're talking about like, scheduling, like the championship. There's a lot of people who are like, where is it? When is it? There might still be like details that are being developed behind closed doors we don't know about. And so no one can say anything because there isn't a firm date or location at the current moment. And whenever you see companies doing stuff that are not in-house, usually it takes them a lot longer. We've seen the same thing with like Fantasy Flight Games working with Disney with their Star Wars IP in their games. They are basically the same as Ravensburger. It takes them a lot longer, and it's not as straightforward as people would prefer. So yeah, hopefully in time they can tighten up that downtime, I think is a good word. So that way people get information quickly and succinctly so they can plan and go, all right, we know what's happening for the next 9 months versus, well, it's coming. We don't know when. So we'll hold on to our PTO and pray we can actually go to this event.
Yeah, definitely.
But I have faith. I do know that their team is listening. They've constantly said they're listening. The biggest question is, are they changing? And we'll find out. I'm not too worried about it, but it's interesting to also from like a business perspective, because you were a consultant. So you've worked with helping to develop and grow people, watching the evolution of a business from where they were, where they are, where they want to be, and following that trajectory. So far, I think Ravensburger is doing well, but there's so much to do, and it's a brand new company flirting with TCGs. The developers aren't, but that doesn't mean everyone else isn't, and that's what fascinates me. Because Ryan and Steve know their stuff. They've developed some of my favorite cards of Magic. Like they know the lingo. They know their business. That's not the team I'm concerned about when it comes to what we're going to see in 2025. So that's where things get more interesting. How about marketing? How about licensing? How about all these other divisions? Are they on the same boat as the community of trading card game players? Because we don't know. So it's not uncommon for a company to have people in a position that are good at their job that may or may not be interested in the product. It happens all the time. So it's always fascinating.
I think, to your point, it's an area, it's an angle that I definitely think about and look at a lot. Right. And just going back to my experience with Chicago versus my experience in Seattle.
Massive improvement.
What was so fascinating with Seattle is, obviously we're in the backyard of most of the team. And it was great to meet so many of the developers. And it was amazing to see how much that team has grown in size.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so, like any organization, you look at obviously revenue, profit, right? All your typical standard things, but you also look at the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I met one developer who had joined the company like a week ago, and here they were at a Disney Lorcana
Who was
challenge
it?
experience.
Was it Lucas?
Yeah, it was Lucas. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
It was Lucas. Yeah, lead singer. Yep. Good guy.
Yeah, and so I think that also made the Seattle. If I had to pick one challenge to attend, it would probably be Seattle again, just because I think a lot more of the developer community can just show up, right, and they just play in side events,
Yeah. Home
not
base.
official side
Hit it on
events,
the
but they're just
nail.
there, they're just hanging out, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that was such a cool experience.
Yeah. And I'm interested to see what I'm interested to see what a lot of people are doing, because like Magic is kind of retooling themselves. They've been in a bit of a slump. They're fixing a lot of their problems. Konami, who knows? I don't know what they're up to. Pokemon is staying strong, so I'm enjoying watching their business plan. Bandai is launching a bunch of stuff. League of Legends, Riot is doing a bunch of stuff. So it's just a good year. 2025 is a good year for trading card game fans. We're going to be eating good, fam. So same thing with Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited. Like everyone's really pushing the gas pedal to the metal. So now we get to watch and see, what are they going to do? Are they listening to their community? How do they evolve? And I don't think the question is, will the Ravensburger team improve? I think the question is where are they going to make those adjustments? Because again, they're always listening, but that doesn't always mean they can do something about it at the speed we on the outside want it to be. I think that's where a lot of patience needs to come into play, because there's a lot of room to improve, and they'll probably do it. Now we just have to wait and give them the space to breathe and do it, not knock on their door and beat them down and go, hey, do this thing we need you to do. It's like, well, hold on now. Let's give them some space.
Yeah. Well, so here's a curious question for you, because when I think about the momentum that, again, look, in year one to, put out a global competition, right?
Yeah.
Tournament series, what do you want to call that format? I don't know. Maybe Star Wars has done this, right? I don't know if they have their kind of version of, regional, national, global competition yet.
Yeah, they do.
That's great. I would hope so, right? That they would do that. The thing that I'm really looking at in 2025 is what happens to Disney Lorcana as it breaks into the Asian markets, right? I think with China and Japan joining this game, and again, I'm curious from your thoughts on this, because I think I remember seeing an article where I think Magic the Gathering no longer localizes in Chinese anymore, right? And I don't know why, but I think I remember seeing that when I was doing some research. It's around trading card games, right? Obviously in Asia, obviously Pokemon, right, is core. But when I think about the Asian markets, and I was looking to say Chinese, like China and Japan specifically, you likely have a higher number of people who are major collectors, and also love to play just trading card games, period. And so it's like rocket fuel on rocket fuel in my mind. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts, predictions. I mean, I think China and Japan are gonna completely change the meta, right? I don't mean like the card game meta, but I mean like the overall vibe. And I'm excited, but I'm also like just super curious of what's going to happen in 2025 as a result of that.
So have you done any research into how Japanese players in the Japanese market affects a given trading card game? Like, again, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. Okay. So I'm Japanese, so I'm very, very biased. I will put that up front right now. But
and I'm Chinese, so there we go.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
something interesting about the Asian market that I don't think the American market necessarily knows or understands as well is usually Asian players are very pro experimental. And if you look at Asian players coming over to America, generally they're a much higher win rate. So if you look at like video games as a great example, StarCraft is a great example. People think about StarCraft and Korea. America's not even on that board because they are just so much better in the way they train, the way they think, the way they perform, the way they just operate in that game space. And that's not just a video game philosophy. That's just games across the board. Asian players are very, very passionate, and they usually zone in on like one game, and that's what they do. And I think in American culture, we're very used to, I'm going to play a little bit of A, a little bit of B. I'm going to go watch some movies with my friends. I'm going to go hang out. Like, you do a lot of things socially. And it's not uncommon to see Asian players just kind of find like a core group of super competitive players. And they basically work, eat, sleep, and play. And that's it. They like live that game. So I feel like we're going to see, when we get to worldwide championship levels, we're going to see a large amount of very qualified Asian players putting pressure on the rest of the world to, perform at high levels. But the other thing is, generally, there's a lot of self-expression and experimenting with unknown cards, unpopular tech, weird, like, I think the term is jank for most people.
Sure,
And
yep.
It's not uncommon to see Asian players testing with these really off the wall, super unique, very bizarre decks. And then they show up to an event with something you've never even considered, and they just crush it. And you're like, oh, what was that? And it's like this one combination no one's ever seen, but it's this like perfect anti-meta thing because everyone's playing X and Y, and they show up with, Z, and you have no prep for it, no answer to it. And you're just like, oh, okay. So it's going to be interesting. Also, the market over in Asia is huge, massive amount of player base. Like, there's going to be so much of an infusion of new people coming into the community just because they're going to be printed in the cards are going to be printed in an Asian market. So I think from a growth space, we're going to see Lorcana grow exponentially. And I think in terms of the metagame, you might see something similar to Yu-Gi-Oh, where there's an OCG, which is the Japanese Asian market, and the TCG, which is the American market. And they may be similar. They might be very different. The biggest difference in Yu-Gi-Oh and versus Lorcana is Yu-Gi-Oh is a ban list. And the ban list is different in Asia than it is in America. So there's clearly a different meta. But because Asia gets the cards early, they usually solve the meta before America gets the cards. And so American players just kind of look at what's happening in Japan. And then when that set comes to America, they're like, cool, I need card, X, Y, and Z. And that's it. So if Lorcana sticks to a worldwide release, and they can't. They're releasing set 1 now. So maybe they'll catch him up. I don't actually. That's an interesting proposition because this is a rare moment where America has the lead in a set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Usually it's the other way around because most games are, Yu-Gi-Oh's Asian, Pokemon is Asian, all the Bandai trading cards are Asian. So they come out in Asia, and then America gets them, 3 months later. But it's a great question. I think you're going to see a huge boost in just people talking about the game, people popping up in like Reddit, Discord, like just groups of people are going to show up out of nowhere. It's like, well, yeah, the Asian market is a very strong, very powerful market for gaming in general. It's just a cool thing people love in the Asian regions.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that perspective. Again, completely brand new to me, so really fun and fascinating to hear you talk about it. And you kind of confirm and validate a lot of assumptions I have, right? Which is it's gonna be wild. So yeah, 2025 is gonna be super exciting.
Yeah, it's gonna be very, very cool. Also, I'm really excited to collect Asian cards because Japanese kanji on Lorcana cards is like, okay, chef's kiss. This is cool. I would prefer to play with kanji on the cards, although if my opponent can't read it, understandably, I'll have the American translation. But yeah, I think you're also going to see, hopefully, now this is a personal hope of mine, because I know a lot of card games, once a meta is kind of, air quotes, solved, American players generally, and this is a big generalization for those who are listening, American players generally kind of lock into that, and it's rare to see drastic deviations. Asia markets usually will try it. They won't like stick with it if it fails, but they'll at least give it a whirl and see what happens. And if it fails, great. We now have a data point of these cards in this deck do not work. But usually in American and European metagames, once the deck is kind of figured out, there's not usually much of adjustment. It's more of a pilot tightening. You're sharpening your skills, you're sharpening your combos, you're sharpening your play lines. You just practice playing with that deck until the next set comes out. So I really hope to see a challenge to here's the current metagame, what people think are established, and then other people coming and going, well, here's this thing no one thought about. That's going to kind of change the mixture of expectations. And now we have this kind of weird rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock thing going on.
Yep.
And so you're forced to be flexible in your playstyle and deck construction versus here are the top 2 decks. If you play this one deck, you'll probably win. If you play the second deck and you don't see deck 1, you'll probably win. And it just kind of turns into, I think, a really good way to explain it. It becomes kind of stale because if you're not playing deck 1 or 2, you have like a 3% win rate, and that's just not fun, especially if you're paying money to travel to events, knowingly bringing something that will not perform well. Because if you're a competitor, you generally want the best advantage you can have, the strongest opportunity to win. And if you're spending money to fly, stay at a hotel, eat food, pay for tickets, transportation, anything else, souvenirs, all kinds of stuff, that adds up real quick. And you don't want to go into that scenario with a 2% chance of winning a game, let alone the event.
Right. Yeah. It's such an interesting perspective. I think this kind of leads to a different question topic, which is, I'll kind of throw 2 out there and we can pick apart both of them. The first one is, I think Lorcana is, with set 6 and upcoming set 7, I think we're finally at a point where we're starting to see, it's not just amber steel, right? Equals steel song, right? We're starting to see variations, right? And there's enough cards where we're starting to see the meta evolve in that kind of way. So that's exciting, right? I think the game is maturing and you want to see that. So the other part that is really interesting to me though is, how the fatigue of sort of, again, we have a set every 3 months, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And the fatigue that as a new player, I feel, again, not as a collector, right? as a casual competitive player.
Yeah. Don't play Magic.
Yeah. But to me, it's a curious question. I mean, what advice, right? What advice do you have for the parents, the families out there where, how do you balance, right? What are the decision paths to make, right? If you're not a collector, if you're obviously a collector, you're collecting, right? But if you're not a collector, how do you stay in it so that you don't feel like you're left behind? Because I could see a parent who gets overwhelmed, right? I could see a family that gets into this game and in set 6, set 7, and then all of a sudden it's like set 9, and they're like, do we still keep up with this?
Yeah. No, you are asking one of the most fundamental questions of any game ever. It literally doesn't matter if it's got any kind of collectability whatsoever. Everyone comes to this crossroad. And the very first thing I've learned and heard from very, very experienced players, you have to set expectations very early on. And if it evolves over time, that is perfectly acceptable. But don't lie to yourself. Do not tell yourself, I'm just going to play for fun. But you're buying 20 boxes of product every set. That is total horseradish. If you just sit down and tell yourself the truth, I'm going to play this for fun. Play it for fun. If you get the bug, an urge to play competitively, that's fine. But if you need to pivot back to casual, you need to be honest with yourself, because sometimes people kind of falter on, I started as a casual player, now I'm going to compete. And then, life happens. Like you get married, you get a new job, you lose your job, you move, stuff happens. And sometimes you have to sit down and go, well, I don't know if I really want to be a competitor for whatever reason. Maybe there's burnout's real. For people listening, burnout is real. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly acceptable. If you're burnt out, do something else until you're interested in coming back. Don't force yourself to play a game you don't like, because that'll be the nail in the coffin of you're done. You're not going to play that game ever again. But like I take breaks from all games I play. Usually I'll take a month or two off from any game and do something else. And then I come back and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go. I'm so excited to get back into this game because I haven't done it in a while. And you kind of reignite that fire. But the very core answer to your question starts at set that expectation and be honest with yourself. A lot of people aren't, and their friends tell them, hey, you got to play competitively. I don't want to play competitively, but my friends are, making me do it. So I guess I'll do it. I'm not enjoying it, but I'm with my friends. So, that's good enough. If you're not enjoying it, don't do it. Just, you could stay with your friends and play games on your phone or your Nintendo Switch or whatever. There's other things you could do in the same room with your friends, but you don't need to be forced into something you don't like. That is super common in the hobby, any hobby. The other big thing is set a budgetary expectation. A lot of these kind of boil down to expectations because it's really easy to go, oh, new game. Let's use Disney Lorcana as an example. Oh, no, Disney Lorcana, it's here. We're going to buy in. We're going to play as a family. We're going to go to our local game store. We're going to have so much fun. And for the first set, we're going to drop $500. Well, are you going to continue doing that every set, every 3 months? Are you going to have $100 in 3 months? You're going to have $200? Like, what is an actual realistic thing that you and your play group can do and have fun with? And again, there's a lot of pressure with, sometimes a business will go, hey, I noticed you dropped, 3 booster boxes last time. You're going to order 3 booster boxes this time? And you're like, well, and you as the customer should have the freedom to say, no, I can't afford that, or I don't want to pay for 3 boxes. I got 3 boxes because it was fun, and this was the first set. I'm going to buy 1 box and pick up singles along the way. So yeah, you have to kind of set a tone for yourself, and maybe it's set by set. Maybe it's for the entire year. Everyone's financial scheduling is different, but have a game plan. That's the big secret to success. If you're going to buy a bunch of singles, great. If you're going to buy a bunch of sealed product, that's also great. But you don't want to go into, set 7, set 8 with, well, last time I spent $1,000. I guess I have to spend $1,000 time. Like, no, you could do whatever you think you want to do. That's totally acceptable.
Yeah, it's such an easy trap, right? Especially if you're, look, I think anyone who's into a trading card game to a certain degree collects, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think you just touched on something, which is there's something actually more core, which is the card game is probably, the tip of the iceberg on some things you need to deal with, right? If you're finding yourself addicted to your hobby, right? It's merely the symptom, right? It's not the root cause. But yeah, expectations is so important. And I think thanks for bringing that up, because I do think that's been part of the evolution of my thinking, right? Is setting expectations and kind of where we are right now is, one, we've moved away from buying a lot of boxes because, if we're not chasing after enchanteds, right? Yeah, it's expensive. We're not collecting. Then why am I buying a case, right?
Do you do any like financial stuff with trading card games? Any kind of
no, not really. I mean, the expected value right now, right, of an average Disney Lorcana booster box is,
oh boy, it's bad.
Yeah, it's not great, right, at all. It feels bad, right? Again, as a new player now looking back, right, even on some of the singles that I've purchased, I'm like, yeah, that Clarabelle that I bought for $30, right? And it's like, I only played it once in a deck, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel good. So I think there's a learning and a growth piece. But and again, I think even if I had read advice on that, I think I still have to kind of experience some of that for myself.
Oh yeah.
But where I am on my journey now is like, okay, I think the other thing that has changed for me is in kind of like the last half of 2024, basically after Seattle, Lily and I really got busy with other stuff, right? Like whether it's, work travel that I had, or her, other hobby. She had a dance recital, piano recital. Other things took away where we weren't going to league. So for set 6, I think we only went to league once. And so that also does something with sort of like your weekly experience, right? We really kind of you could argue that we stepped out of the game. And as a result, it feels like with set 6 in particular, looking back, I'm kind of going, did I really need to pick up all those cards? Right.
Yes.
And so like, again, that expectation piece is there. Now, from a budgetary standpoint, I think we're in a really healthy place, right? I think for me, it was the commentary with my wife was, okay, how much money would we be spending on Lily if she had a hobby that was a sport, right?
Right.
Cards are her equipment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So she was a skater, dancer, cheerleader, outfits, basketball player outfits, cleats, whatever, you name it. And so that's kind of how we've ballparked and stayed within budget, right, for now. But again, I do think as we go into 2025, this is going to be an area where I feel like had a year, right? Made some mistakes, made some great decisions.
No, you hit some learning junctions. They're not mistakes.
Exactly.
If you continue to do
it's all learning. It's all learning. Exactly. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Yeah. The growth mindset is
you didn't
really
know.
important. I didn't know. Exactly.
How could it be a mistake if you didn't know? You're learning.
Someone told me on some Reddit right now, some Facebook group. No, you're absolutely right. I think that's going to be really key for us, and I feel like I have a really healthy relationship with the game right now. I think, which is good.
Yeah.
And again, I think as a parent too, right, just to go back to the kid dimension, right? You want your kid to find hobbies that they love.
Yeah.
And I think for kids, that cycle may be faster, right? Maybe more cyclical, right? Than you realize. So, I think it's been a good season of like, it's the winter, right? It's almost like Lily's gone into hibernation a little bit. And, I'm even asking the question of like, are we going to play in set 6 championships? Or are we going to play in set 7 championships? But time will tell. Right. But I think this summer's been, summer was great. Last summer was incredible. We went to so many different events and competitions, went to a challenge, and having that summer break was a great season of that. And maybe winter break for us is like hibernation mode. I don't know. So we'll figure it out.
Well, there's a couple other things you touched on that I wanted to kind of expand upon. And I've been doing trading card games since like 32 years. Like I was there back. I'm old. I was back when like base set Pokemon came out. I was playing that as a kid competitively in Los Angeles when I was living there. And something I've learned over many, many, many years and many thousands of dollars spent, play games you love because you love them.
Yeah.
And if the love starts to slow down, that is perfectly okay. You can always come back. But I feel like some people might get into a hobby, whatever the hobby, and they hit a moment kind of like you have right now where life happens. You've got other things to do. You've got other hobbies. And maybe that one, like in this example, Lorcana, it kind of gets pushed to the side. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing. So if you feel like, hey, I want to come back in set 7, sure. If you look at set 7 and it's like, man, I'm not really interested in pets. Okay, don't play it. That's fine. That's totally fine. But if you're having fun, that's the most important thing. And it's not uncommon for trading card game players or gamers in general to have cycles of, I'm going to play this game for 12 months, and then I'm going to play this other game for 6 months. And then I'm going to go back to the original game for 6 months. And then maybe something new comes out. Because, again, the market is flooded with games. And we as humans enjoy new. So it's not a sin or a crime to go play the new Gundam trading card game. And maybe you come back to Lorcana. Maybe you don't. That's fine. It's totally fine. But that's a big thing I like to try and share and drill into people's hearts. You don't have to play a game. Like Ravensburger's not coming to your house with a baseball bat. Like, hey man, you need to buy some of those box. You got the accent. It's like, you bought some boxes now. You got to buy some new boxes for set 7, or we're coming after you and your grandmother. Like, that's not how it works. You get to do what you want to do with your resources. And the other big thing I love sharing with people is I don't recommend, unless you're a business. Don't look at trading card games as an investment. there is just so much depreciation in the value of product. It's worse than cars. If you think cars are bad when you drive them off a lot, like the moment you open a booster box, you've usually lost like 30% of value just right off the rip. Like you take that plastic off, it's like, cool, I paid $144, plastic's off, it's now worth like 110. You haven't even opened up packs. If you're opening packs and having fun, that's good. If you're opening up packs trying to get a hit to then pay your bills, which I have friends who did this in Magic, don't do that. That is very dangerous and usually doesn't pan out well for you. You were talking about buying a $30 card that you played with once. If you bought the card and you enjoyed the card and you're happy with the card, that was a well worth purchase. If you buy the card and now you're thinking about if I should have bought the card, maybe not. Possibly not. Yeah. It's the same thing with pin trading. Disney pin traders are notoriously great for telling people, buy what you want. It's easy to look at this pin that's limited editions, $50. It's 1 out of 500. Do you like it? Do you even care about that character or that artwork or that thing on that pin? Or are you just buying it because it's worth something and maybe in a couple of years it'll go up in value? That's not fun. That's a business. Now, if you're doing it as obviously, if you're doing it as a business, that's a different perspective, but most people aren't. So don't go into a trading card game. So like we'll use Lorcana as an example. Don't go into Lorcana buying packs, hoping to make money. Don't think like a YouTuber. Most of it's fake. I'm a TV film editor. Most of that stuff you see, it's like, oh my God, I have this God box. Well, they might have weighed it previously to see if it's got, bigger hit. There's so many things that you don't know. And you should, again, enjoy what you do for the fun of it, not for the potential monetary gain. Because if you spend money on a case, $600 plus tax, you on average are not getting $600 in product, especially with the current debacle of set 6 and a lot of the enchanteds are sub $100. So even if you crack an enchanted, you didn't get a card worth the value of the booster box you paid for, which I know a lot of people aren't happy about, and that's totally fair. You want to feel like if you buy product, you get value for your product. But again, trading cards are not the Wall Street stock market, and I don't think they should be treated as such. Even I run a trading card business. I do it because I love it, but I also have fun working with people, buying bulk. I play in tournaments. I'll crack packs. I have my own collection. I'm trading with people. Like there's more to it than just buy box, open box, make profit, rinse, wash, repeat. So I think if people, again, set expectations, they'll have a lot more fun than looking at YouTubers going, man, that individual I just watched opened 10 packs and pulled 3 enchanteds. I want to do that. I could do that. It's like, well, the math is not in your favor of that happening, and probably shouldn't spend your rent money on booster packs to try and get enchanteds. Because I've seen this happen, and it's like, don't do that. No. My buddy did it. I can do it. No, don't do that. And then they're asking you to help them pay their rent. You're like, oh no. You are on your own, dude.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, again, I think this is such an important topic from the lens of I think 2025 is a big year for how do we create space for families right into this game.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is create an expectation, right? Where you're going to get something more than, let's be honest, right? Just some really great memories out of this.
Yeah.
And I think that's so key because again, that collector piece, if you're a collector, you're a collector, right? If you're a pack rat, you're a pack rat. I'm a reformed pack rat. Yeah. I'm learning to Marie Kondo it, and I'm not doing a great job as I stare at my stack of bulk cards. No, we're taking the bulk cards, we're turning them into decks to give away. So,
but you're having fun with it. That's the good
we're having
part.
fun with it. Exactly.
Yes,
yeah. I think that's so key is the fun as a family can be so many different things, right? Going back to your piece of, we are in an era where there are so many games.
Yeah.
what I love about trading card games and specifically Disney Lorcana is I'm spending that time with Lily and it's not in front of a screen. I will be honest. I mean,
Yes. Yes,
I
absolutely.
stare at a computer monitor, you know, 6 to 10 hours a day, whether it's staring at a spreadsheet, right, or on a Zoom call. And there's something so refreshing about, like, as much as I really wanted to get into video games with Lily, like we definitely played through Animal Crossing in the pandemic. That got us through
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
That was like her first real game, right? And then she learned. I watched her learn to read, like her not from the game, but like at the start of playing Animal Crossing, I had to read every single text dialogue box to her. And by the time we came out of the pandemic, right, a year later, she like learned to read, and so she could play by
So
herself. I mean, it was
cool. Yeah,
amazing,
that's
right? So
awesome.
that chronicled this moment, right, a milestone for us. But look, there's something that's about gathering at a table and being able to play a game. And so
Yeah.
actually what's evolved for us is it's funny, right? Like Lorcana has been our gateway to other board games, right?
That's
Um, and,
awesome.
and it's also been kind of fun to meet, families where they're like, oh yeah, we played Villainous, and then Villainous was our gateway to Disney Lorcana, right? But it's fun, like this past Christmas, and Lily's birthday, she got a bunch of board games, and so there's a few that we're really looking forward to digging into.
Hmm.
Flamecraft is one,
Yep.
and then finally getting into what else? There's a Ravensburger like marble maze game. I can't remember the name of it.
Hmm.
Gravitrax, I think is
Yep.
what it's called. So she got that from her grandmother. So I think we're loaded up on board games over the next, really for the whole next year. But
Yeah.
I'm excited to just enter that era, with her. It's fun. It's really fun watching her mind work. And again, I think the key word here is fun, right? These are the
Yeah.
experiences that are fun. And if your kid's not into this stuff, that's fine, right? But
Yeah. Don't do it.
if your kid is, like,
Do it.
man, there's such a great community here, right? We're having a lot of fun. So
I'm gonna ruin your life. Have you heard of Board Game Geek convention in Dallas?
no,
Ah, okay. So it is the week before Thanksgiving. It is a 7-day event. They have a board game library of like 30,000 board games. You pay a fixed rate. You get like 2 or 3 designer board games, and then you have access to that library for the whole week. It is totally family friendly. Every board game you could ever think of is in that room. And if you don't know how to play it, someone is there teaching you how to play it.
love it, love it. That's
So,
awesome.
and I used to live in Dallas, so you could just what's Austin to Dallas, like 3 hours, 2.5.
Yeah, it's 3 hours. Yeah,
Yeah. So you could just drive up for a couple days, play whatever you think is fun, and then zip back home. It's amazing. It's so much fun. If you like board games, it's the ultimate convention, and I can't recommend it enough. If you think DLCs are fun, yeah, BGG Con is like, it's super laid back too. It's just a bunch of people playing board games. Like that's literally it. No
I love it.
tournaments, no nothing. It's just board games, nonstop, 24/7. Um, yeah, there's always room to grow in gaming. I think that's the best part about everyone's experience. They're all unique and they're all different, but they're all valuable.
Yeah, no, I love that. And to your point, right? Again, it's about community. It's about hanging out. And that's why I love the space. Right? It's been really fun to dive into it.
Hmm. And you've got so much more on your future. Like there's a lot of stuff you get to experience that some of us old heads haven't in decades. And I'm really excited for you and somewhat jealous because, what you're going through right now, I was doing in like 95. So like it's been a hot moment when it's like, the freshness of a card game. Now I'm like, oh, a new card game. What's it about? Nah. You know, you've seen so many card games come and go. You have a filter of expectation. And so if a
Sure.
card game doesn't hit certain checkpoints, you're just not interested because it's not going to last. It's just not. You've seen it a million times. Lorcana is obviously not that thing, but it is fun to be in that zone of here's our first game. Disney Lorcana. Here's our next game. Who knows what that will be? Here's our third game. To be determined. 20, maybe it'll be in 2030. But it's a fun adventure. And you get to do it with your daughter. That's the coolest part. It's not just you. It's you and your family across the board. And I think it's really exciting. It's super cool. I love hearing your stories. They're really, really, really neat. Because no one else really talks about that. Most people are individual players. You don't see a lot of like father-daughter combos. And it's like, yeah, love to hear all about your fun adventures.
I really appreciate that. I mean, yeah, this is it's been fun to kind of spend some time with you and kind of recap the year, right? Plus, right, for us. So excited to continue to do what we do, right? To your point, like have a lot of fun and hopefully bring more families along to have fun too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we've been here quite a while. It's getting late, so let's wrap this sucker up. Why don't you tell everybody, again, who's stuck around with us for this whole thing, who you are, where they can find you, and then what are you up to next? What's on the docket for you and Lily? Are you doing anything fun in January, February, March? Like, what's on the game plan for us?
Yeah, again, so thank you so much for having us. My name is Daniel. My daughter and I, Lily, love Disney Lorcana. So we've got, our social media handles, Lorcana Fanatics on Instagram, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, you name it. And, what's on the horizon? I mean, I think, for January, February, March, it's hopefully a lot of Disney Lorcana. We'll be hosting a kids extravaganza, just a really fun casual format to get more kids to learn how to play the game. So we're going to spend, I think, like the first part of the day just teaching new players how to play. We got a bunch of bulk decks built for them, and just really focus on creating a really fun experience. And then the afternoon is going to be, let's take that deck that you just learned how to play and play some games, right? And hopefully make some new friends. And so looking to really crank up those events, see how the first one goes. And then, we'll be at the North American Championships and looking forward to having a lot of fun there. And that'll be a great experience too. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you come back later in 2025 to talk about that event, see how it went and what you learned, where the evolution and growth is coming from, and all of the fun experiences you're going to have across the board. But thanks for joining us. I appreciate you, Daniel. It was a lot of fun. You are always welcome to come on the show, my friend.
Well, likewise. Have a great one.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is Sugi for Kado Games. So remember, play games, have fun, and we'll see y'all next time.